Today on Locked On Red Wings, what's going on with Andrew Copp?
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I'm a podcast producer for the daily JAWWJ News Radio podcast. Well, Scotty's the host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Scotty, happy Tuesday. How are you doing, buddy?
Doing pretty well, man.
Feeling well rested?
Yes, very, very. I slept like 11 hours last night, so back doing well. High school hockey coverage for the news starting back up again as the calendar turns. So that's usually I don't bring up whatever I'm working on with the news, but because it's hockey, I am now. So for the next 2-3 months, that'll be my life. So really some really good teams out there. Detroit Catholic Central, rather, always, a juggernaut. So but yeah, it's good and good solid little Monday here for yours truly.
Nice. Good for you, buddy.
How about you?
Doing pretty good. Still getting over this sickness, but getting better every single day.
And tonight, everybody listening to this will know the outcome, but I'm having some people over. That'll be fun.
We are having 3 off days in a row here with the Red Wings don't play until Thursday. So this is day 2 of the off days for those who are listening. But it's really just day 1 for us because we're recording this on a Monday. And we wanted to take some time to talk a little bit about Andrew Copp. Pretty straightforward episode. Andrew Copp and then Alex Debrincat in the All-Star game. Because Andrew Copp's been kind of on the forefront of everybody's minds in, I would say, this season, going back to last season, even with the core surgery, but this season it feels like more so. He's kind of becoming the scapegoat of the forward core when it comes to like performance. And I can't necessarily, I don't want to turn him into a scapegoat, but last year, Scotty, you and I gave him a mulligan based on his performance. A year he still put up 42 points, which is the second highest point total in his career. Because of the core surgery. And we know how hard, not personally, but, through other various athletes who have had core surgery, how long it can take to fully come back from that. This year, he comes back fully healthy, he has a training camp, and, he's just on pace for 38 points, which is a step down from his production last year and an even greater step down from his career year with the Jets/Rangers just 2 years prior. And so when you take into that and just like how the offensive part of his game has really seems to be taking, a step off the edge of a cliff, you got to ask, Scotty, is Andrew Copp underperforming or is this a usage issue?
Well, I kind of want to start with the scapegoat thing. Last year, I was one of the people that was more vocal about like, hey, in the second half, he was way better than the first half. He didn't have a preseason. He was coming off of a pretty significant injury. Like and like I said, he took a pretty big steps forward, I thought, in the second half of last season. And I was really excited about Andrew Copp this year. Thought that JT Compher was clearly going to be ahead of him on the depth chart, but was still pretty pumped for like 3C Andrew Copp. I thought that was a good role for him. And this year he hasn't put it together. And I don't know if it's just a failure to excel within the system that's in place, which kind of doesn't make any sense to me because I feel like he plays.
It's a defense first system,
right? Like at his style should be like exactly what this system excels. That's why JT Compher has been, doing pretty well so far in a winged wheel. Like I think that it's that Copp should be someone who's doing well, and he just hasn't been. And again, like for as much as I kind of went to his defense last year, this year, I think it's really hard to feel the same way. That all being said, like scapegoat is also far too dramatic, just from the sense of like like team scapegoat for a guy who last night played on the fourth line is preposterous. Like, that's absurd. It's absurd to look at the team and like the team struggling and be like, wow, this is somehow Andrew Copp's fault. Is he playing super well? Is he living up to the contract? Is he et cetera, et cetera? No, not what I'm arguing, but that's preposterous. How many times have we come on here after losses and been like, wow, this game falls on the shoulders of Andrew Copp? Like, it just hasn't happened, which again is part of the reason, I guess, to an extent, why, we're having this conversation, is because he, I guess at times he feels invisible, and that's certainly not living up to the money that you're paying him. That's a huge reason why when you determine, I'm kind of rambling here, but like when you try and determine if someone is like playing well or playing poorly, it's all based on expectation. And I know that you and I just talked about this before we hit record, but like it's all expectation based. And going into the year, when you had what Copp did in his contract year, right? Like you said, with the Jets and Rangers, became a free agent, what the Wings paid him, and then what he's been doing now, he certainly hasn't been, and especially in a salary cap sport, it's important to play as well as your salary determines. And just from what we expected when we signed him, he hasn't been that.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously there's more to it than just point production with a guy like Andrew Copp, right? Like, you sign him for more so for his defensive side of the puck, and you hope that he can get you 45 to 50 points a season on top of that. Decent offense on top of stellar defense. Unfortunately, neither have been there. And you brought up the word expectation, right? And the reason at the beginning of the podcast, beginning of the episode, I phrased it as underperforming or poor usage is because we had a similar conversation with Seider and Woolman just a few days ago, a couple weeks ago now, actually, about how their performance isn't a regression by them. It's about their usage. And mostly we were talking about Seider, but Woolman has been playing on his pair. Woolman had an explosive breakout year last year with the Red Wings, so he was included in the conversation as well. And the main difference between the two of these in regards to, how we look at whether or not they're underperforming or poor usage, in my opinion, is that word you said, expectation. And that is for me, the crux of the conversation. Seider is 22 years old. I'm not trying to make this a Seider versus Copp conversation, but for sake of comparison, Seider is 22 years old on an entry-level contract, making like $900,000 a year. Andrew Copp was coming off a career year where he put up 50-plus points, 20-plus goals, and was in the faceoff circle. He was dominant. Defensively, he was dominant, playing with the Winnipeg Jets. And there's always a risk when you sign somebody off a career year that's at the peak. And when you're going to pay somebody in free agency, you're always going to overpay. But you're paying this man $5.6 million to play for your hockey team. You signed him to be your defensive shutdown, like a two-way center that is more defensive oriented, dominating in that sense.
You signed him to be your 2C. Like, we're having a conversation this year about like, oh, can he like solidify the 3C role? And no, he played on the fourth line on Sunday night. When you signed him to be your second line center. That was the expectation when pen touched paper, man.
And then on top of that, and it's just one game, so I don't want to isolate that one game and be this guy's a bust. But on the fourth line with against the Anaheim Ducks, Heath, Fisher, and Fabry did not look good. Every single time they were out there, it looked as if they were getting caved in. And part of that, again, this is why I don't want to make too much out of the one game he played as the fourth line center, because it is one game, and it's hard to build chemistry with two line mates you rarely play with in one game. But Andrew Copp is underperforming his contract massively, especially when you look at the usage that they have used him in. And I will get to that usage. Before I get to that, though, we should take a break, because the usage, when I talk about it, ends up being a long-winded monologue/ramble. So I know when to stop when I'm ahead. We're going to go into a quick break. When we return, we'll talk about the usage of Andrew Copp in segment 2 of Lockdown Red Wings. Got to talk to you guys today about FanDuel. The NFL regular season is over, and Super Wild Card Weekend is this week up ahead. And hey, well, by the time you're listening to this, the game is over, but the national championship game is on the line for the University of Michigan, and FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and you can bet on all those games using FanDuel. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. Did you know the Vancouver Canucks on the road against New York Rangers were plus 140? The Canucks, one of the hottest teams in the NHL this season. Now, granted, Rangers, very good hockey team, but Canucks plus 140 on the road, one of the hottest teams in the NHL. Put a little bit of green on that, put a little money on that. Also, got some good odds in the Michigan football game, so I bet on that as well. Not a lot of money because I don't make enough money to blow it, but I keep it. It keeps me invested. So you too can stay invested in sports using FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, you and I, we talking about Andrew Copp. We both feel he's underperforming his contract right now. He's getting paid $5.6 million for the next 3 seasons after this one. And you signed him to be that two-way center with the defensive first kind of orientation on that two-way. And you hope to get like 40 to 50 points out of him. And right now, you're not getting anywhere close to that type of production. Let's take a look at his usage too. Because like I said, we made that argument. We made a similar conversation with Sider, and we argued it was a usage problem, not a performance problem. Let's look at his player usage chart real quick using the frozen tools at dobbersports.com. If I can pull it up. Sometimes it takes me a little while. And here you can see the usage chart for all the forwards on the Detroit Red Wings. Yeah, give me 1 second. I'm drawing a blank. Here we go. Zoom in a little bit. And here you can see, and I'll explain it for people who are listening and they're not watching, but the y-axis here is the quality of competition. There it is again. Quality of competition.
Competition, baby.
Competition. Relative. Corsi for percentage relative. And then the x-axis is offensive deployment, offensive zone starts percentage. Andrew Copp is, and to be fair to him, the second hardest quality of competition deployment out of anyone on the Red Wings. The only any forward on the Red Wings. The only forward with tougher quality of competition deployment is actually Michael Rasmussen. You'd think it would be Dylan Larkin, who is just slightly third on the team in quality of competition deployment. But it's actually Andrew Copp who is the second, Michael Rasmussen with the first, and he has the third most defensive zone deployments of any of the forwards on the Detroit Red Wings, which puts him comfortably second overall on this graph because he's far up there in that top left quadrant. The top left quadrant is defensive zone deployments and stiffest competition. So to be fair to Andrew Copp, they're putting him in those really tough positions and starting him in the defensive zone.
That's my point. Is like this is what you signed him to do, though. Like
yes, exactly.
Like the whole point. The whole point of signing Copp is to deploy him against tough competition in your own zone. That's like the whole point. So that's why, like, I don't really care. Like this, I love stats and like this is great to highlight our points, but like I don't care about his deployment because this is the deployment that we want him to flourish in and he's not. So it's a slightly different conversation there.
No, and that's the point I was actually trying to build to. I just couldn't find my way to it. This is the deployment, like you said, that you signed him to be in, right. And he is not.
And even like, well. And now, even you shift. Okay, now the expectation isn't 2C, obviously.
Now you're paying him $5.6 million.
So, but like now we're looking around and now is he even a solidified 3C? Clearly not, right? Like it's just been a slow kind of decline. And he just, I would really, really, and this isn't me saying like, cut him tomorrow or whatever, but I really would like to see of like anybody on the team. I would like to see him just get hot and just be really effective for even if it was just a few games or a couple of weeks in a row, just to show that like that's still in there and what we sign him to be. So that's what I'm rooting for. Obviously, if you wear a winged wheel, I'm rooting for you until you're not. So this is certainly not like a slam piece. It's just he hasn't lived up to what we thought he was going to be.
Yeah, and we want to talk about highlight some areas where he is very good, right? Like he has the most amount of penalty kill minutes out of anyone on the forward core right now, and that's what a forward that's a penalty kill that is like 11 for 11, 20 for 20 right now in the past stretch of games.
Right, he's not useless. That's not what I'm saying either,
and
for sure.
He's above his career average in face-off win percentage. One of the big things you signed him for was winning face-offs, and he has been doing that. But the problem becomes, like, if you wanted somebody to kill penalties and win faceoffs, you could have just kept Luke Glendening. And granted, Luke Glendenning's, did he even sign with anyone this year?
Yeah, he's somewhere. Hold on. I just went down this rabbit hole recently.
But my point being here is, if you wanted somebody who could just do those two things, you could have gotten somebody who was a lot cheaper than $5.6 million.
For sure.
So obviously he's got 3 more years left with the Detroit Red Wings, and he's got a 10-team no trade clause. So he's likely not to go anywhere.
Glendening has played every single game for the Tampa Bay Lightning and is winning 57.3% of his faceoffs.
You could have just kept Luke Glendening.
I love my dog, man. I miss him dearly. I really do. That is my dog for life. I love Luke Glendening, man. How about the 61% faceoff win his last year in Detroit? Golly.
That's incredible. I mean, like I said, I'm not giving up on Andrew Copp, mainly because he's here for another 3 years after this, and so we need him to succeed. And he's shown in the years past that he can do that. And he is like on pace for his like career average in points in 38, but you just signed him to be a two-way center that could provide some offense and be even better on defense.
Yeah.
And he's shooting 7.4% right now, which is below, like, that's the thing too, right? His shooting percentage was really low last year. So you were hoping it would bounce back more. He only had 9 goals last year. He's at 5 right now. It's just like, if that shooting percentage can get up, like, he's just so snake bitten in the offensive zone right now. I think he's almost inside his own head too, about like, he knows he needs to score more. It's just, I am not giving up on Andrew Copp, but to say he's not underperforming would be a lie.
I completely agree. That's where I'm at too. Like I said, I'm not trying to say like cut him tomorrow or anything. The reason why I hold out hope is again, like, not that he was, Connor McDavid in the second half of last year or anything, but like he was better, once he kind of got his feet under him. There's still a lot of hockey left to play this year, and the biggest thing, again, I'll end this conversation with how I started it, was like, on paper, this dude should be a perfect fit for this team. That's the thing that I guess maybe frustrates me the most about it too. But like, on paper, from play style alone, this should be a guy that excels and flourishes immensely in this type of system, and is exactly what this team is trying to get their hands on as far as player types. So obviously rooting for him and hope that he can turn it around. But up to this point, since being signed, and the reason we're having this conversation now is because of, Sunday night's game was kind of an exclamation point, or highlighted that struggle, especially in that second goal there.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll take another quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about Alex Debrincat being the All-Star, as well as if any other Red Wing should have the honor of joining him at the All-Star game. So stay tuned to segment 3 of Lockdown Red Wings. Got to talk to you guys today about Gametime. Scott, I talk about it all the time. If you're sick of spending a ton of money on tickets because they just use those sly little fees to hike up the cost of your tickets, you got to go to Gametime, because they're the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. They include all-in prices that show your total upfront, so you know exactly what you're spending before you even check out. You can buy those tickets in seconds with 2 taps and see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. With zone deals, you can pick the section, and Gametime picks the seats for big-time savings. And the Gametime guarantee will always help you get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty and I are going to talk a little bit about the Red Wings all-star representative and if there's anyone who should be should be given the honor of joining him, even though most players hate going to the all-star game because they just would rather take the days off. But Alex Debrincat, obviously the Red Wings representative for the all-star game. This season, Alex Debrincat is 38 points in 40 games played, 17 goals, 21 assists, on pace for about an 80-point season for the Detroit Red Wings. He's just been, I think he's been about what we thought he would be, about as advertised. He went through a pretty lengthy cold stretch there that he's emerging from now. Patrick Kane helping him break out of that as that connection is alive and well. But, I mean, he is just a lethal threat on the power play anytime he's out there.
Yeah, man, for sure. I think, I don't know, you could get super nitpicky, but like that's not the point of the episode. Maybe a little bit more like goal scoring 5-on-5, I guess, in a perfect world. But like you said, he went through a little bit of a cold streak there and has breaking himself out of it lately. So yeah, he's the production's been good, the goal scoring's been good. Obviously got off to a crazy hot start the first 5 or 6 games of the year. And yeah, I think he pretty clearly deserves to be in the first round of all-star choices.
Absolutely. So Michael, were you surprised at all that he was the one? No, I thought it was going to be him or Larkin. I really thought it was going to be him.
Yeah, Larkin. Agreed. It's always going to be Larkin or somebody.
Yeah.
So
in previous years, there hasn't been like anyone else besides Larkin to really choose. Yeah. Last year, Raymond and Seider, not so much. Seider had a rough half of the first half of the year. Raymond in general just kind of had a sophomore slump kind of season. So Larkin last year was like the guy, but this year, I mean, I think there's a handful of candidates, and there's a fan vote going on. And by the way, they're doing an all-star draft this year rather than the division.
I'm so pumped the draft is back, man. The draft was that was like my childhood. The draft was electric, dude. Ovi begging to get picked last, so he got the car that one year. I love the draft, man.
He's just sitting back.
Yeah, he's like holding up a sign or something that said like "Don't pick me." He was. I miss the draft. I'm kind of glad it's back, especially for like it's lighthearted. It's the All-Star game. They don't matter, whatever. So
no, it doesn't matter. But there are 8 more skaters and 4 more goalies that can be selected. Scotty, do you think that there are Red Wings, and this is a fan vote, so you guys got to go out there and vote for the people you want. But do you think if there was any other players on this roster? I kind of just named the one a couple minutes ago that are deserving of a roster spot on the All-Star roster?
I mean, I do think Larkin, obviously, right? That's a pretty easy one for if he's not in the first round, he's going to be one of the players that I do think it would be cool, now with like every team gets one representative, and now so there's not how do I word it? Like only a select teams will have 2 representatives, right? So like that would be kind of cool to be one of the teams that has multiple all-stars, because that's certainly not going to be very many teams. What is it? 11, 12 teams are going to have 2. So, well, I guess in theory, whatever math, it could be less than that. Anyway, it would be cool if the Wings were one of those teams. So yeah, Larkin's going to be in that conversation for sure. I do think Seider deserves to be in that conversation as well. Always hard with defensemen. Tough to get the vote. If it's just given to a defenseman, that can kind of make sense, but especially not like a Makar, high point producing defenseman. Always kind of tough to lead that conversation unless you're really established and already kind of have made a name for yourself. So I'm not really holding my breath on that one, but I think that he would deserve to be in that conversation. So yeah, those are really the 2 that jump out to me. But yeah.
Seider's always going to, unfortunately, probably struggle to make into the All-Star game because he doesn't have that just pure 100% octane type of offense that defensemen and the league tend to gravitate towards now. Obviously, he can still very capable of putting up very impressive numbers from the back end, but the game's just like focuses so much on your Makars, your Hughes, your Foxes. You can put like 100-point seasons up that it's going to be tough for somebody who is a little bit more balanced on both the front end and the back end to make it in. But I agree with you that he definitely should look, especially when we just had our whole conversation last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, about the type of and they don't care about this. They're not going to look at this, but the type of competition that he is facing at his age and the type of responsibility that he faces and how he's thriving in that role.
It would be
despite
hilarious
what the haters
if the NHL
think.
was like, actually, you looked at the deployment stats, and
Right?
Snyder should be in the All-Star game.
Right. But yeah, I mean, Moritz Seider absolutely, I think, deserves to be in that conversation. I actually also think that Patrick Kane's a dark horse candidate. I know he's only played 14 games, and so he's not going to make it. 16 games,
There's
rather.
no way that happens, but it would be sick.
But I mean, like, think of the storyline. If you're okay, putting the PR marketing hats on right now. I mean, Patrick Kane is probably the best American hockey player to ever really sit up.
Yeah.
Like that he is in the conversation for that, like up there with guys like Chris Chelios and Mike Modano. He is in that conversation, if not now leading that conversation. He is going to be a Hall of Famer. He's coming back from a surgery, or has come back from a surgery that no one has ever come back from in a meaningful fashion before. And he's put up 14 points in 16 games with the Detroit Red Wings in his comeback story. Like, from a PR perspective, I know it's a fan vote. So I mean,
yeah,
hey,
how are you gonna lead the PR robot votes?
I'm typing on the keyboard right now. I'm getting that.
Are you coding? You're writing a code.
I'm coding right now. I like that as a dark horse candidate. I know that only 16 games played, he probably won't, but it's up to the fans. So if the fans vote him in, he could be there, probably against his will, because he probably wants the days off, just like Larkin. Like, that's the other thing, is like, Larkin deserves to be there, but I don't want Larkin to go. I want Larkin to have his 3-day or week and a half off, whatever it is. That's crazy too. I looked at the schedule, by the way. The Red Wings have 3 days off at the end of January, play the Senators on the 31st, and then immediately go into the All-Star break.
Yeah.
So they have, like, besides the one game they play, they have like 12 days off consecutively. I'm like, fantastic. Just great scheduling, NHL. I applaud you. Just like this week, they have 3 straight days off before playing 3 games in 4 days. They play the Edmonton Oilers at home on Thursday. They play the LA Kings at home on Saturday, and then they play the Leafs on the road on Sunday, an hour before the Lions playoff game. It's like, who does this? Why do we have 3 days? I'm getting off onto a tangent. This is not part of the conversation. It baffles me. How do you have 3 days off and then 4 games in 3 days? I don't get it. Including a back-to-back at home and then on the road. Anyways.
No, keep going, dude.
I could. I've gone down this multiple times. I'm sure there's a reason. I'm sure it's just logistics thing, but it's crazy to me, especially because all 3 of those teams are incredibly difficult to play against.
Yeah.
Moving on. I think the last person, honestly, and I don't think people understand actually how good of numbers that Lucas Raymond's been putting up this season. He's got 32 points in 40 games played, 11 goals, 21 assists. You know, he's on pace to, I think, break his 40 games, 32 points in 40 games played. He's on pace for over 60 points. He's going to crush his rookie record, his career high that he set in his rookie season. So, not to say that he's outperforming some other deserving candidates, but if you're talking Red Wings solely in a vacuum, which is what we were doing, that deserve a look, I would probably honestly rank it like, obviously, Larkin 1, Seider 2, and then Kane and Raymond. Ooh, but Wallman 2. Yeah,
the other thing is, this isn't a Red Wings centered conversation. This is comparing our players to 31 other teams. Lucas Raymond is not making the All-Star game.
But it's determined by a fan vote. So we could vote in Christian Fischer if we wanted.
Okay, you do that and let me know how it goes. You start that campaign. You get Christian Fischer in the All-Star game, and I'll eat my words.
Our John Scott moment.
I'd vote for Christian Fischer. That's my dog.
But I mean, it's just meant to be a fun little hypothetical conversation. But if we're like seriously though, it's Larkin, Seider, like the 2 most deserving guys behind Debrincat.
Sure.
Okay, cool. That's the conversation. I just want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Tomorrow we're planning on having Andrew Rinaldi, our Griffins guy, come on and talk to us about how our boys down, or I guess down in the AHL can still apply. It's down a level.
It's over there.
It's over there. It's somewhere in Michigan, out west, I think. So we'll talk Grand Rapids Griffins on tomorrow's episode, and they're on a 5-game heater. So let's go Griffs. Anyways,
let's go Griffs, baby.
Any final thoughts?
We ball.
We do ball. We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow, same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.